starting with just a quick look at attendance. We have all of our commissioners here. Our two alternates are not here yet, and if they arrive, they'll be seated.
Jackie is planning to come in, she's on another meeting and will be here late, so I should.
Okay, well, maybe we'll see Jackie later. So, for the next item, we wanna take a look at minutes for the regular meeting of July 1st. Did everybody have an opportunity to look at those?
Good.
And any comments would be welcome. Comments, corrections, omissions?
Tony didn't find anything then, it must have
Yeah,
been.
it must be pretty good.
You're quiet.
No comment.
Yeah. I personally don't have any comments either, so if there are no comments on the July 1st meeting, then why don't we vote on that first, and I'd like a motion to approve as they were submitted.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve the minutes from the July 1st, 2024 regular meeting.
I'll second that.
And so there's a motion and a second, all in favor say aye please,
Aye.
and those opposed nay. The minutes are approved as they were submitted 6-0. So the minutes for the September, excuse me, we better stick with July 1st. The minutes for the July 24th meeting. Comments on July 24th, omissions, additions, corrections? No. Okay, well, let's move along then too on those minutes, and can we get a motion to approve July 24th?
Mr. Chair, I will move that we approve the minutes from the July 24th, 2024 special meeting.
I will second that as well.
Thank you both. Any further discussion on July 24th? Then we'll vote, all in favor say aye please,
Aye.
and those opposed nay. And the minutes have passed for adopted as they were submitted for July 24th. Okay. The next item that we want to take up tonight is under the heading of new commission business.
Mr. Chairman, if you would,
Oh, excuse me.
yeah, if you would jump to planning director report on page 2 of your agendas, number 6. So notification of applications for receipt. If you don't mind, you don't have to amend the agenda.
No,
You
actually,
don't have to amend the agenda because it's just a briefing item. But I do want to. I want to make 2 points. We're going to try to make it a habit. Usually, if you think about how you get items, they're submitted to the planning department, and then they show up for action on a future meeting. We're going to try to, particularly for public hearing items, we're going to just brief you on them, just letting you know we've received this application, and we're going to, we plan to schedule it for a future date. I think it's good for you to know what's coming, particularly on big stuff. If I don't want to be surprising you, so you have questions, in advance before the hearing item gets there. But so this is an application of Lou George, who's the applicant for a text amendment to the zoning regs to essentially add and permit agricultural events and organic recycling to our industrial zone. And this is in conjunction with a farming use that's working with the town to locate on town property on Wolcott Road. These uses are not permitted in the I district today. The town-owned land on Wolcott Road is zoned I. It's the former
Community farm.
the former community farm. And so that's what it is. But sometimes we ask the applicant to just make a couple of comments just to brief them, Lou. So if you want to,
Sure.
I would just offer whatever you want to say. Yeah.
I wouldn't want anybody to think that we don't take seriously your input, George. But I put my Post-it note over my reminder note. Skip trail.
I've literally just.
Okay, so
No
here we
worries.
are.
Good evening, my name's Lou George from Hassan George. I represent Thrive Farm and Flamic Farm Earth Products. And Chris Latz is the owner of those two companies. Chris is now the operator and leasing the community town farm as of July. And as we were going through that leasing process, we realized that the farm has been there for many years, but it's in an I-1 zone, and technically the agricultural operations are not permitted in I-1 zone. So to clear that, it's obviously grandfathered in, but to clarify that, we thought it best that we, under 5.5, we add agricultural operations and organic recycling to the permitted uses. We also saw that there is no mention in the regulations of composting, organic recycling facilities. It's ongoing in the town. The town is doing leaf composting at the site now. So we added a definition with staff's help. We proposed this definition to be added to 17.4 for organic recycling facilities. And then with that, the operations that are gonna be done at the town farm all fit within zoning regulations. So that's what we're proposing. There'll be a public hearing coming up on the 16th.
Yeah, so you'll have a public hearing on that text amendment, and then whether either on that date or subsequent to that, you'll have a follow-up site plan application.
For the operation.
If
It should be on that night.
If it's
The idea
approved.
is to have it on that
Sure,
night. Yeah.
sure.
So on the 16th, we're gonna see the text amendment.
Yeah, you'll have the
Jesus.
strike-through text amendment and all that stuff.
And a site plan just for the operation, the temporary building thing he's gonna have there.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
You can return to your regular scheduled
Yeah, right.
agenda.
So, the sequence that was planned, we're back to dealing with the issue that we've talked about for on and off, but about standardizing the communications of the announcement process for certain aspects of the land planning, land management, land oversight, the various committees and commissions that deal with those issues. But Brittany, you're gonna talk about this, as I understand it, are you?
Are we on the public noticing?
Yes.
Text amendment, yes.
So I would recommend perhaps have the vice chair read, since it is a public hearing, I would read the call sheet and read that into the
Okay,
record.
Thank
it's application ZC number 24-19 of the Simsbury Zoning Commission applicant to amend the town zoning regulations, including section 16 and a new section 18, and to amend the Simsbury Center Code, chapter 7, to provide for additional public notice options related to land use applications requiring public hearing notification under the Connecticut state statutes.
Yeah. So if you'll recall, this feels like a long time coming, but back in June, we started this conversation about amending our regulations to have some consistency with our public noticing requirements. State statute requires current newspaper notification of public hearings as a bare minimum. But we felt that with public hearings in town, in order to reach as many residents as possible to let them know what's going on, we wanted to make sure that we included both a butter notices of certain applications as well as a sign posting, in addition to this newspaper notice that's currently required. This would make for consistency across these public hearing notices, our ZBA notices, special exceptions, wetland public hearings. It would require a summary of text changes, including adding a section 18 to our zoning regs which will be at the end of the document, public hearing notice requirements. The removal of notice requirements in the zoning board of appeals, just to make it consistent, and it will all be in section 18. And then also the Simsbury Center Code needs modifications as well, and that's to 2 sections. Currently, there's applications that require sign postings for the center zone, but we would add the abutters within 100 feet would also be notified. The Simsbury Planning Commission heard this item at their July meeting and gave a positive referral. And with that, any questions?
Does this make things just internally, is it actually easier because it makes everything the same, or is it more work?
I mean, it does mentally make things easier when you have a public hearing, you know you have to do these requirements. You're right, for zoning board of appeals, it was a sign, for wetlands, it's a butter, so it does get kind of dicey in those, I mean, in that context. It's work in terms of us making, mailing the abutter notices, providing the sign to the applicant. But it's not, it's nothing that, becomes routine, and it'll be something that will be, routine over time.
Great.
That was a nice politic answer. It is a little bit more work. It is a little bit more work, let's be clear, it's a little bit more work, remember but we think it's well worth it. Listen, it makes your process way more transparent for the public. Today, we do particularly for zoning stuff, so for public hearings related to, particularly special exceptions, right? That's where we do most of our public hearings, that we get the most interested in people, or master plan changes. We just do we do the required minimum. 2 times in a newspaper of record, the Hartford Current, nobody's going to legal notices to find out when the public hearings are. So, for a special exception now, we'll mail abutters notices. We will announce the public hearing to those adjacent property owners within 100 feet. And then by placing a sign, that alerts the entire community. We are going to ask the applicant to post the sign, so that part is not going to be work. We're going to ask the applicant to post the sign on their own within 15 days of the hearing and sign an affidavit that attests to that I signed it. And then staff can generate the mailing notices. And most of these special exceptions, property owners within 100 feet, you're talking just a handful of property owners. So that burden is not great, but I think the value
Yeah, the
of letting
transparency.
the neighbors know what's going on is really important.
Okay,
That's
great.
we
Just wanted to check in.
I'm curious, first of all, I'll just say, A, thank you for all the work you guys put into this. B, I'm always for transparency and just notification. If there's a sign and the person says, oh, I see something's happening on this house, like what would they do to find out? Would they call you, or do we have a website where they can look up all the public notices?
Yeah, our sign would have a phone number on it of
Okay.
our main office, so we would tell them about the application.
Perfect. And I think it
It
sounds
says
great.
pending land use application or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And again, the application of this is for applications that require public hearings only, so site plans, no, it's gonna be special exceptions, site plans on complicated ones where you require a public hearing, and, kind of master plan changes, if they're for a pad or something like that.
The caveat being, public hearings for text amendments would not require this. We
Right,
can't,
right.
there's no butter, it's the whole town,
There's
so
no
it's townwide, so
yeah.
it's just so you know.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
I agree.
So it is a public hearing, so you're certainly welcome to
Yeah,
take
so
testimony from the public.
any other comments or questions at this point, then we'll hear from the audience.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience wanna come up and speak on this application?
I will, just for practice.
Sure, there you go.
Okay, I like it.
Alright, so I just wanted to say this, I like everything about this, I think it's,
Tell your name and your address.
oh, okay, my name is Fabio, and my address is 5 Clifton Drive. So I like everything that you guys did here, I like it a lot, but I would like to see some changes. One, I'd like to see not 100, 200 feet, because 100, every lot on my street is 150 feet. So if my neighbor, not my direct neighbor, but the other neighbor, which could impact me, is doing something, I'd like to know about that. So I like 200, and then I also don't like the word abutting. And the reason I say that, behind my house is a strip of land, maybe, I don't know, a couple hundred feet. Behind that is another piece of town land. So if something were to change on the land behind my house, I'd like to know that. So I don't like the word abutting. And that's it.
Actually, that's an interesting point. Does this like if in areas where there's like community open space, does it account for an abutting property owner or not? Cause like we have little
Yeah,
swaths.
I mean, the
too.
point's well taken.
You just said
We would-
within, sorry, I don't know if I'm
we
supposed to.
would probably.
No, actually, we're done for now.
We would-
Temporarily.
So by-
If you wanna come up again,
by
the sound
practice,
system, you need
by
to get
practice, we would
recorded.
jump. I would tell you that by practice, staff would jump to that. But the solution to that is all properties within 100 feet of the subject property. That's the solution there. Remove a butter and just say all properties with, or whatever distance you're comfortable with. That's how to get rid of that challenge.
Right, cause not all, there are properties that aren't abutting that would be
Yeah.
notified. So you're right, that
Okay,
I don't
so he makes a good point, if we take out abutting, I mean, if we're talking about some houses that are on several acres of land, I mean, I think we wanna keep abutting because that would address that, but like,
Yeah.
I'm really bad at measures, like how far is 100 feet if we're talking a house
So you go
that's
from the
on
border of the
acres?
property, so you're always
Oh,
going
So
to
yeah, I mean,
hit
in more urban settings, it's more property, in more rural settings, it's less property.
that's kind of a
But
dumb
then you would
question.
have the
Okay.
opportunity to see the sign
Big
on
sign as well.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that it is a sign, just because you're not directly notifying, there are the
Yeah.
signs up, so I don't know that the distance is really that big of a problem, especially in a denser area. If we extend it to 200, you guys are gonna be notifying like potentially a ton of people.
Yeah, so hold it, let me just, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, we say abutters, but the language actually that we drafted
Mhm.
says all property owners, and I apologize for not knowing this immediately. It does, the language actually says, the planning department shall notify owners of all properties within 100 feet of the property which is subject to the application.
So regardless of the ownership,
Yeah,
no,
so-
the owner.
We're using abutters as a
So we can
frame of art, a term of art, but we are in fact gonna do all properties within that distance.
Where do you get the adjacent property owners' names, from the tax rolls?
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
Where did you get the 100 feet? Did you use like other examples as a guideline for what is common?
Yes, I think wetlands right now is 100 feet, but also
So
other
both
towns.
wetlands and the planning commission use 100 feet.
Okay.
And then we did look at some adjoining town, Brittany looked at
Yeah.
some adjoining towns. I think Canton has 100 feet.
West Hartford has 100 feet.
Yeah, so there, it is kind of common, and I think when you add the sign, we're way exceeding what we had previously done.
I mean, the language here in the red
Yes.
on here, I mean, it seems like we're covering both bases. Abutting and
Yeah.
100, 100, whatever.
We are.
100 feet, so
We are.
that's very good.
Yeah,
Well done.
Hey, Alan, you
Ellen Gilbert, 126 Hot Meadow Street. My thought, I've appreciated the signs in the past, and I'm very much for the signs. I'm wondering if, I'm sorry? But I'm wondering if we could also include a sign, say, right out here outside the town hall, saying that there's going to be a public hearing, then it alerts people to look and find out what's going on. Because the issue of selling the property on the corner up on Firetown, I don't drive on Firetown. I would, as a citizen of Simsbury, not know what's going on up there. I would not be driving up there to see a sign, but if I saw a sign down here that said public hearing and a date, I would be inclined to look it up or to call. So I'm just asking if that's a possibility of being added. Thank you.
Is that even within our purview?
I think it's not, I think it's a recommendation or a, it's under it would be under town administration to kind of figure out how to do that. You know, we do post these notices on the planning website, you know, the public notices. For our stuff.
Okay.
your stuff, I should say, our stuff.
Other comments on the suggested language? Commission members,
No.
everybody feels comfortable? Well, why don't we close the public hearing then and move on with final discussion. Would somebody like to make a motion to close the public hearing
Like to,
on application 870,
I'll
section 87?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any further comments? All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. And then comments for final discussion on the text itself, any changes? No.
I did notice a typo, but I gotta find it now, because where the heck it is. Not even a typo, just I would word it slightly different. I won't be able to find it now. Sorry. Talk amongst yourself, I'll find it. Sorry.
We'll find it
Okay, now I found it.
and
Okay.
fix it.
It says, so in the first, section 18, the first paragraph, prior to blah, 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 or other applications, the commission required a public hearing. I don't know, I just feel like there's a word missing there. Prior to a scheduled public hearing for special exception applications, zone change applications, variance, blah, 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 or other applications the commission have required a public
I
hearing?
think, or other application in which the commission
Something like that.
requires a public hearing.
Yeah, just something like that. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
And then you have draft motions at your desk.
I'm happy to make that motion if.
Shannon, did I hear you say you'd like to make a motion to approve the,
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
do you have a copy of the draft motion?
I do.
How about reading?
I would love to.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that the zoning commission approves application, wait, am I in the right place? Yes. ZC number 24-19 to amend the town zoning regulations, including sections 16 and a new section 18, and to amend the Simsbury Center Code, Chapter 7, to provide for additional public notice options related to land use applications requiring public hearing notification under the Connecticut state statutes with an effective date of September 23rd, 2024.
Second.
I should have asked for a second, but, oh, I did, oh, Kate, did you
Yeah, I
second?
seconded.
Oh, okay, thank you. Any questions, comments on the text?
No.
If not, then we're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The application 2419 is passed. 6-0.
Mr. Chairman, the next item is a zoning compliance review, which is applications you don't see very often, but it is a request for a home-based business at 11 Briarwood. Mr. and Mrs., I apologize for not saying your last name right, Adamako?
Yes.
Are the applicants and owners of that property. We allow in our zoning regulations two types of home-based businesses. The first type of home-based business is essentially an accountant or a lawyer who has no clients and no activity, just kind of a home office style. And that the zoning regulations in section 3.5 leave that approval process to the planning staff. We do allow home-based businesses that that are a little bit more intense or have a little bit more activity where an applicant is serving clients, for instance. And that's, in this case, we call it a home-based service business. And under our regulations, it requires the zoning commission to essentially approve the application, and in doing so, allowing the zoning, your zoning staff to issue the permit. So we've got the applicant, and I'll be quiet in 1 second, let her come up and explain. They as you can tell from the staff report, operate a consignment shipping business where they collect goods, they store them, and then they ship them. And the goods are stored in the garage and then packed up to 6 times a year into a shipping container, 6 occasions, and then shipped. The container is on site for that period of loading. 11 Briarwood is kind of between Old Farms and Firetown Road, and I gave you a little picture of the house. We do have review criteria. Now the criteria 3.5353, it's not review criteria. It says these are the things the zoning commission should consider when making a decision. And so I just highlighted a couple of ones that are probably relevant to this application. With that, I'd suggest you ask the applicant to come in and explain the business.
Okay, would you folks like to come up, go to the podium? And for the record, we need you to state your name and the address, although we have heard the address already, but.
Okay. My name is Salome Adamako. My husband couldn't make it with me tonight, so we live at 11 Briarwood Drive in Simsbury. So we have this home-based business that we collect used computers mainly, and we ship to Ghana. So what happens is, like he rightly explains, we store it in the garage, and then when we have enough stuff, we load it into a 40-feeder container and we ship it. So whilst we are collecting the stuff, my husband is the one that normally will go get them. We put them in the garage, so I would say one person, and I kind of do the paperwork on it. And when it's time to load, that is when there is an activity on the property. And normally maybe, I would say 2 days in the evening that people will come and help him load it. And then within that, they will take it away. So.
Are the helpers, are they volunteers or are they paid for?
They're paid whilst they come. So it's like contract at that time. So it's not like they're on payroll. Because it doesn't happen that often, depends on how much we had, and I put 6 because that's how much we did last year.
Have you ever,
Excuse me. Yeah. Tony, be my guest.
have you ever had any complaints from your neighbors about the activity on your property?
No, because like the opposite, we kind of told those around us what we do, because of course, bringing a container on the property and it's like, what are you guys doing? So we kind of let them know what we do. Yes.
Is it like a standard shipping container that you'd see on any like a freight ship or anything like that?
Yeah, like the 40
It's like
feet,
a metal.
a metal container
What are the dimensions, did you started to say? The dimensions?
of the container.
Half
To
this
be
room?
honest,
I could answer that if.
it's a 40 feeder. That's what I could say.
It doesn't fit in your garage.
No, it's in the driveway. It doesn't fit the garage.
So I'm bad at size, but so how does that compare to, say, like a dumpster, if you ordered a dumpster from Payne's or something?
It will be longer than a
double
dumpster
the
because I
size.
know.
Double the size.
Dumpster, yes, double.
Okay.
Double.
Because
Pretty good.
Payne is I think 20. Yeah, the biggest is 20.
And then how do you get that off your property? Does it, what
The
kind of?
driver comes, drop it off, and then
Yeah.
when we are done, he picks it up.
Okay, so what kind of vehicle is that? Is it
It's
like
a truck.
like a tractor trailer style truck or okay.
So, the proposal being made by the planning department is that the container cannot stay on site for more than 24 hours. Is that feasible from your perspective, that you can load and remove the container within 24 hours?
24 hours will be too tight, to be honest. I'm not going to stand here and lie.
And what would
24 hours will be tight.
be a reasonable?
I would say the maximum will be 72. Yes. If that is what we are given to do, we would have to make it work within the 72. That one I know is feasible, we can get that in.
Well, I think let me just see if I've got that, then the 72 hours is not from the time it's delivered, it's from the time you start loading?
No, the 72 will be from the time it's delivered, because let's say, normally, because my husband work, we both work, like you see, I'm dressed, I'm going to work from here. So normally he would do it like after work. So like it starts in the evening. So let's say get home around 3, and then they might work on it like a little bit in the night. And then the next day they will do it, and then the third day, like it's all set, they close it and they'll take it away, like that. So let's say if it's today that we are loading, he will bring it off during the daytime and pack it.
So when he's working out, doing the work, he has somebody with him
Yes,
when he's out there, so.
when he's out there, yeah.
But this person is not a relative or doesn't reside in your home?
No, they don't live in our house, no.
Have you already been doing this?
Yes.
For how long?
This is the second year?
And you've had no complaints from the neighbors?
No. The last time that we had a container and Joe came around and said, one of our neighbors had said something. And so I explained to him that I said, we told our neighbors. And normally when they are doing it, it's not like they're making noise, it's adults that are doing the work. So, and he said somebody mentioned it, I think they want to know what's going on. And I said, it's reasonable, it's a container. And it's all dark, you don't see what is in there. So definitely I understand. And he told me, let's do this and come so that we are aware and everybody knows what's going on.
So when we're talking about noise, 75 decibels, like what level of noise is that? I mean, I'm only able to picture like a dumpster, and when you're, putting things in a dumpster and there's nothing in it, it echoes and it makes kind of a ruckus. So
I understand, because these are computers, so you cannot just throw them. You have
right,
to lift them
okay,
and pack them. So it's like you packing stuff. You're not just pushing and shoving them. You have to do them carefully,
okay.
so you don't break things.
Yeah, I would imagine the loudest part,
Ah.
I would imagine the loudest part of this is when the truck's backing up,
Right.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Yeah, picking it up and dropping it off.
I assume then that the container does not have any outside lighting. It doesn't have any lighting on it, or
It's just a car.
I don't know anything about
No, I
containers. Maybe they have lights, who knows?
No, the truck have the light to carry it around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you know there's a set of rules about home-based businesses doing things in the home in the nature of a business?
To
And
be
I asked the
honest-
question because I'm hearing a few things that are strictly, they're prohibited, and I'm not sure, you're 2 years out plus, and no one said anything that, you're not in compliance with our regulations, that's for sure.
Mr. Chairman, ignorance is no excuse, but to be honest, I did not know. So when Joe came and he said, this is what needs to be done, so let's file it. So we did that. Because we have an LLC registered back. And he said he saw it when he pulled from the town. But I did not realize that the zoning thing is also under that.
But the first one on the list, first of the parameters, is only residents of the dwelling, they have their workplace at the residence. If you're thinking because there's time in between when they're engaged, they're not, it's not a problem.
Well, I would say with that, I mean,
Yeah.
the guy who works on your lawn doesn't live at your house, like, I don't know if that's the biggest deal, if they're temp workers. Just,
No, I think the tractor trailer.
yeah, well,
Up and down
that's,
a residential
more of a-
street 6
Yeah.
times a year
the
or plus.
people is less the issue
That's
than I
more
think
a
maybe the,
concern.
than
Yeah.
the
Right.
That's a
tractor trailer.
commercial type
Yeah.
of business,
Right.
not a residential.
So,
So-
oops, excuse me. No, please.
That's okay.
Oh, okay.
Interested in hearing from everyone.
Sure. So what is a day of this, or so 6 times a year, what is this typically looking like? You bring the truck in, set down the container on what, a Friday, and it's gone on Monday?
Yes, or Sunday. the pickup.
Or Sunday?
Yes.
So. Okay. I'm just thinking out loud about like so a 24-hour isn't good, which I can understand if that's an entire shipping container full of computers. if we could maybe like try to limit it to like it has to be like Friday and it has to be gone by Monday or something like that, like a very strict kind of timetable to
In some ways, it's like less, well, I guess it depends on who's doing what in the neighborhood. I don't know if the weekend is more or less disruptive, but it's more productive for them because you're not at work theoretically.
Yeah, that's why I'm, yeah, so it's like, it's on the weekends. I'm trying to,
One might say that people
Yeah.
aren't around during the week, and so it's less disruptive during,
Yeah.
it's different now, people work from home, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
weekend is not always.
it's not like there's a ton of foot traffic in that neighborhood though, right? Like what is what road is it on, sorry?
Briarwood.
Briar Road, it's not a main road, though, it's not like right on Firetown, that's
No, it's off Firetown
just
and
off
then
Firetown.
off Old Farms.
There's
So
no
we are in
sidewalks and
between.
stuff in there,
It's
right?
not gonna be, it's not gonna be a traffic issue.
Right.
No,
And it's an eyesore it's an eyesore plus the truck on the street disruption.
yeah,
Those are the main complaints that I would think that people would have.
yeah,
And the eyesore, it's so short.
yeah, it's like people have dumpsters all the time,
Yeah.
right, to get stuff out, and this is bigger, but not,
And it's not on the street, it's right in our driveway. We have a long
that's why
driveway.
in the
I'm
driveway.
like,
Yes.
Right, but it's double a dumpster.
it's bigger, but it's not, you know, it's,
My,
small.
It's double.
my concern is growth in the business and
Yeah.
like how to, at a certain point, I mean, this would be great if this grew for you,
Yes,
but at a
right.
certain point, I would like to see the growth turn into a different location.
That's it, that is the goal.
And so for me, I'm trying to figure out how we can ensure that it doesn't really, cause like what we're talking about is like, oh, okay, it's a few times a year, and then all of a sudden, I don't like want it to be this like massive shipping business
Right.
happening on Briarwood, though I hope for you that growth, just not there.
So the goal is that if we're able to make it big, we get a warehouse.
Yeah.
Because definitely we
Yeah.
don't wanna do it at home, if
Right.
we wanna do this full time.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
goal.
I think we can address Kate's concern by adding a condition limiting the number of times you can do this per year.
Right.
So how many times are you doing this per year? I mean,
Last year was 6 times, that's what we did.
So if we were to limit it to no more than 6 times per year, would that be?
I would say for now, yes, we could, yeah,
Alright.
we'll do that, and then that means if we get more than 6, that means we have to move.
right,
That'll
once
come
every other
back.
It
month.
gives her no
And move
growth,
it
and I'm
like
like, I'm just
a
trying
warehouse
to,
location.
right, I'm trying to understand like, well, is 6 the number we have to pick, cause that's how many times I did it last year? What's an acceptable
I
number,
asked
because
her.
I feel like if there's, if
I
you're
asked,
thinking about business and growing, then that's only staying the same. So is that getting you to a warehouse? Cause I'd like to see you in a warehouse doing this out of a
Definitely. Thank
warehouse,
you.
is really the truth of the matter, right?
Yeah,
Like that's better.
There's places in Simsbury, like all near the airport and stuff, there's tons of spaces that would probably be appropriate for this. But again, yeah, you don't wanna stifle a growing small business. But the 6 is once every 2 months. Once every 2 months for a weekend, there's a container on a residential street. That's what we're talking about right now, and I think, I would agree that more than that is gonna
It's
get.
not on the street, it's in the driveway.
Right, but
I think,
right.
No, there's another rule about not parking things in the street.
Sure, but on the property, once every 2 months for one weekend, that seems to me about the maximum that like even in my neighborhood, that would be, if I had a neighbor with a dumpster every other month, I would be like, that seems like a good amount to me.
Tony, what were you saying before?
You twice the size of
You were trying to say
And a
something.
truck.
Right,
More
it's
than
bigger,
twice the size of
right.
the house.
Yeah, I guess,
the only, I was, it could relate to Tucker's point about limiting it to weekends. I don't support that.
Okay.
I wouldn't, I think that's too restrictive.
I don't think it's practical.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we need to give the applicant freedom to do it when it's most efficient for them to do.
yeah,
I think, I mean, you guys have the right idea as far as growing and going to a warehouse, but it truly sounds like you're already at the point. If you're filling a shipping container,
Yeah.
you already need storage, so to me, the next step would be storage. Use a storage facility, do that, do the loading there, that is a commercial entity. So if you can load and unload the shipping container or have a truck pick up at the storage, that seems like the next jump for you guys before going to a warehouse, obviously.
Oh,
You don't need a
okay.
warehouse yet. So, but
That's
taking it
actually-
out of a residential use.
Have you looked into a storage, like a storage unit versus a warehouse? That's a good point, Jackie.
Right now we haven't, because like I had said, the things are not, you don't get them like one at a time. So it's like a little bit, we collect them a little bit at a time, so we've been using our garage
Yeah,
to do the storage, because if you, let's say you get a big consignment, then you say I could ship it. But now you have to keep paying every month, and it all kinda,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And when you're filling your garage, like, is it filling up the garage? Is that how much, it fills up the garage and that's when you get a
Yes.
shipping, cause that's like about how much goes,
So much that can
a
happen.
2-car garage
it's
worth
a two-car
basically
garage, yeah.
is what goes into one of these shipping containers. Okay.
So, I don't know if there's any solution to this, but as much as I know you said you haven't had any complaints but I would love to know what the neighbors think of this. I don't know if there's any way to do that, but that's, I hesitate to approve this without having some input from the neighbors. I don't know if there's anything that can be done to that, but that's just my thoughts.
Was anybody notified of this?
I think Joe
Yeah, cause
went
it's not a
out.
public hearing.
Yeah.
Again, this is as administrative an action
Yeah.
Yeah.
as we do.
Right. Just saying, it's,
It really is.
Would there be of some value in our tabling this for tonight and not voting?
Okay.
So
At
that you
least
can
today
do
you
some
know,
research,
so-
it's brainstorm this a little bit, is there more that you could do? What might those changes be in that?
the only question would be what can we accomplish?
I'm sorry, but
Right, no, I'm just
it was-
saying-
Brittany just was supplement here, and I think it's, I mean, you could ask the applicant to see if she could get some letters of support.
Okay.
I mean,
for
without, I
voters.
mean, I guess technically you could order a public hearing for anything, yeah, but again, this is administrative and I think we're.
Or how
But
close are you
that's
to
not-
being-
Yeah.
I don't know if
Right
tabling will get us anything more the
Right
next
now,
time.
not yet.
No, okay, so I'm not sure, I agree with that, I just wanted to understand, like, if we table it, you're not having a shipping container come in the next 2 weeks before we would discuss
No.
again, if we did. I agree with you, though, I'm not sure we're gonna be getting any more information, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the.
Again, I think, to put your mind on this, I think you've gotta come to grips with, one, is it an acceptable home business use that doesn't disrupt the neighborhood? That's the primary consideration, right? And then then, depending on the answer, are there conditions you could craft to mitigate any of those existing concerns? And then if the answer is no, well then you're left with that answer. But if the answer is yes, then, time, amount of time to load, that kind of stuff is fair and reasonable as part of an application like this, to condition those elements.
To be clear, George, there's been no complaints from the neighbors directly to the.
No, so I would answer, because you really didn't ask me that question, you asked the applicant.
asking
I
you
think
that.
that is right. We got a question asking what was going on at that location, so
Oh, so one of the neighbors contacted you
that's
guys?
correct, and that's what the applicant said, so we did,
Yeah.
Oh,
what
okay.
was what was the container out there, and so our zoning enforcement
Okay.
personnel, Joe,
Came out.
reached out, and that's how we started this process.
This business doesn't fit the home-based
Right.
business in
No.
our building, in our zoning codes. Go ahead, Shannon.
No, I have concerns. While I think what you're doing is amazing, I'm concerned about the precedent that it potentially sets down the road. I don't know that there's a huge business in Simsbury for people putting, big shipping containers in their driveway. But what I would like to see, I think, is some support from your neighbors. I would like to see letters of, I would like to hear from your neighbors, and then I would be in support of tabling this until another time.
Well,
If those two things can happen.
let's come back to that.
What,
There
I
were some
mean,
more
what
comments
about
on it.
having like a window of time that we approve this for and, you know, work toward the growth that you're looking at such that you're then not running it out of your house? Cause it isn't really a residential use. So I would say like, what if we approved it for a duration?
Well,
like-
the standard's 5 years.
Well, okay, but what if we did it for like 2?
Well, that's not in the regulations either, so.
Standards of 5 years.
I mean,
No, well,
Because
make an
then that
amendment.
would
that's what they
be
were asking.
12 times and it either grows or it can't really continue to happen. I don't know, I'm just saying like,
So if we were to do it, the recommended 24-hour period, what that would mean for you, obviously, is you would have to essentially make more trips. It cuts into your bottom line, obviously. Though 24 hours is not that, like, I think every once in a while for 24 hours isn't the worst thing in the world. I don't hate that idea, even if it's a challenge. It means you have to do more trips. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to get a warehouse.
But they're also,
You have to get it out of it.
24 hours compels them to hire more people who don't live in the property.
I think the
And
24 hours is
further
unreasonable.
conflict with the
I do
regulations.
too, and I don't think a day makes a difference of a container sitting there,
Yeah,
an extra day.
because the truck still has to come in and out.
The applicant has stated
Same amount
that
of truck
24 hours
trips.
isn't
Does
sufficient time.
the truck stay there or
No,
just the trailer?
just the
Trailer
trailer.
stays there,
Trailer, drops
container
it,
stays
Yeah,
there.
makes sense.
So with all that conversation, we do think that, I mean, it says the zoning commission may authorize the zoning officer to issue a 5-year permit. I think that the duration doesn't have to be 5 years, it can be short of 5 years. That would be my opinion on that, I'm not suggesting that, it just, you could authorize that permit for a shorter period of time.
That's the way I would like to handle it. I don't want them to have to forcibly like liquidate all their stuff.
And it would
Give
give
them a
time
little
to
bit of
figure
time
out
to get the warehouse,
option,
yeah.
look at growth options.
Is a year reasonable?
A year, 2 years?
6 months.
6
months.
I tend to follow, I think a year would be, I mean, cause you kind of have you know what has happened in the last cycle of you doing this. You know that it's been a maximum of 6
So in other
loading
words,
times per year,
Yeah.
so.
I would say at least 2 years, if anything, a year would be short, because
Yeah.
we're almost like at the end of a year.
Oh, but it
No,
would
it
be a
doesn't
year
go
from
back.
now.
A year from now, yeah.
Goes
Right.
forward.
So it gave you one more one more fiscal year, if we did it for basically October to October.
So a question for you, Tucker and Shannon. At the end of a year, if they're unable to find a warehouse, then they'll shut down?
They
Well,
don't
the
have to find a
permit's
warehouse,
not-
there's storage all over town.
No, I'm.
We're literally
Right.
putting up storage container centers.
Well, right, but the storage container centers, I don't think could also be used for this business, right? Cause you're not
Right.
supposed to run a business out of the
Right.
storage container, as far as I understand.
It's storage.
So is there a way to
Items.
come back in
I
a
guess.
year and review this
Well,
application?
so we would come back prior to the expiration, back in advance of that.
I'd be in favor of that.
Whatever date you set, we would come back in advance of that.
I'm,
But if the applicant can't accommodate the, or are you thinking a year, just run the business the way it is for a year? Work the other way.
Ideally looking to,
No, I don't think we
Give
should
them
look
a
the
year
other way, I
to-
think we should put our
Absolutely.
72 hours,
Right.
the 6 trips.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're on the same page.
yes,
So when we
Sometimes.
establish changes,
Mhm.
they have to be tonight, right now, agreed to by the applicant, or that we might as well not do anything, potentially, I don't know. If she
I
says
don't
she
think
can't
it's a-
do it, what's the point?
I don't think it's, I mean, okay, that's true, but I don't think it's reasonable to like look to like just table it indefinitely because it's gonna be hard to be fair on what we table and what we don't all the time. I think it will come to question, you know, what are we
Yeah.
tabling,
Well,
what are we
we
not
offer it
tabling? I think we
because
have to
An applicant can withdraw their application anytime they want.
Yes, that's true.
This isn't really an application, it's, well,
Well,
I guess it is.
but I think we've got a somewhat of a consensus here about what we think we can agree on and approve. And then, you know, I mean, I think we've got enough to make a motion now, do you think, rather than table it?
Go right ahead.
Oh,
Shit, that's
What do you wanna,
I was
No, I
saying,
think,
we'll approve for a year the 72 hours, no more than 6 times
6 times in 12 months.
within that period, yes. And what was the other one that was recommended? And then do we want them to limit the space in the garage?
I think you have to, and we'll go back, we'll work with them to carve out that,
Okay.
the proper amount of square footage.
Fine, then that would be, okay, so I.
20.
Let's see,
10 by
let me try this
2,
again.
okay.
So I move
Someone else.
that the zoning commission approves the zoning compliance review application of Salome and Maxwell Adamaco, applicant owners to permit a home-based service business pursuant to section 3.5.3 of the Simsbury zoning regulations associated with the consignment shipping business at 11 Briarwood Drive, assessors map D03, block 208, lot 018, Simsbury, Connecticut 06070, zone R40, as the applicant has met all criteria pursuant to subsection 3.5.3, subject to the following conditions. Shipping containers must be loaded and removed from the property within a 72-hour period. Applicant shall reduce the business storage of goods in the garage by a amount agreed upon between the zoning enforcement officer. Yeah, okay. And additionally, this is to be reviewed again in 1 year from today.
Well, I would simply say
We're
the
meeting
expire,
closest.
the permit is.
This expires.
expires in
This
1 year.
expires in 1 year from today. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, 6
Yes.
times per
Oh,
year.
and this, the
6 times
deliveries,
in
the
12 months.
the removal and just the arrival and removal of the storage unit, it can happen no more than 6 times in that calendar year, that 12-month period.
And each one of those is limited to a 72-hour.
And each one is
From-
limited to a 72-hour period,
Delivery to removal.
delivery to removal. Takes a village.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Good job, Diane.
somebody got that,
Is our staff assume that's all that?
yeah,
I got it.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need it.
We still have
Thank
to,
you.
We got a motion and a second.
we gotta, yeah.
Well,
Discuss and then.
let's just take a moment. Is there a second to that?
Yeah, I seconded it.
Okay. Are there any suggestions to be made in terms of tweaking that before we vote on it?
Yeah, the only change I would suggest is a 2-year period instead of a 1-year period. I think 1 year is too short. I mean, I can support 1 year if that's the consensus of the commission, but I think 2 years would be more reasonable.
Hesitant to go longer than a year personally.
Is there a fee for reapplying in a year from now?
It's a zoning compliance fee, it's
So it's $25.
$25.
I would say let's give it a year, make sure there's no complaint, this is my opinion, and we can look at it again in a year.
Okay, I can support that.
Well, I would just speak in favor of 2 years, because I think if we're gonna support this, and we're gonna make whatever accommodations are necessary to keep this thing afloat and encourage the growth, it needs more than 12 months. It's not realistic that we're gonna get them to a point where they're ready to go somewhere else, but it's not really our job to do the work of, and, in America, many small businesses don't make it. All kinds of things happen, and we can't be, we can't resolve everybody's complexities, but I think 2 years makes a lot of sense. And we have a calendar of stuff that's backed up, and we have our own commitments that I don't see any harm. If we feel that it's the right thing for 12 months, I don't see any harm. That's gonna dramatically change that.
I
Go
just-
another year. I think it'll make a difference for them.
I'd be okay
No.
I'd be okay with 2 years.
I just think that we have information that already sort of establishes what their routine isn't the right word, but what their habits have been, and that we know that it was 6 times last year, and so I'm not like I'm not completely opposed to 2 years, but I just think we have the information already. I just have concerns.
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel bad pushing on this 1 year thing, but I mean, I was originally thinking 6 months, but that's perhaps crazy. So that's fine, but I feel like this is clearly outside of our regulations. This is clearly outside, and we are making an exception because we wanna support the business, and they're obviously, you know, doing all that they can, but I think a year is sufficient. We're approving something that's completely outside of our current regulations.
Yeah, I feel like what we're basically saying is, no, you shouldn't be doing that, but we're gonna give you time to figure out an alternate situation. And a year, while financially challenging, I realize, is enough time to do that. And I don't know what would change in 2 years. This gives us the opportunity to say, look, no one said anything for a year, so I guess we could go another year if there's a real case for it. But I mean, ultimately, I think what we want is this to not be happening there. We're just trying to allow
But
somebody.
we'd like it to be successful somewhere.
Right,
In Simsbury.
somewhere else,
In Simsbury.
outside of the neighborhood,
Following
yes.
the rules that we've set.
Yeah.
Well, unless somebody feels strongly enough to.
Either you get a friendly or an unfriendly amendment, or you've got a motion on a motion and a second.
The motion that's in place that we could vote on is for a 1 year time period, as Diane read it. Now, if somebody wants to ask for a friendly amendment to change that.
I'll move to extend it to 2 years.
And Diane.
So you're gonna wanna
is
vote,
there a
you're gonna
second?
wanna vote on the amendment only of 1 to 2 years before you go back to the main motion.
Right.
Mhm.
And so we need a second for that.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to change the period to 2 years, from 1 year, on the basis of a friendly motion to the initial motion. But we have a motion and a second. All in favor of changing the time period to 2 years, please say aye.
Aye.
And I am also, so. And those opposed? 1, 2, 3.
So I guess the amendment fails.
It's 3 to 3, so the amendment fails. It stays at 1 year. So we're gonna vote on the motion that Diane made, unless there's other changes that people wanna propose. If not,
I just have a question, and I'm not sure if this is related to the motion or not. But in the analysis that staff had prepared, letter C says the business may not negatively affect the character of the neighborhood. Is that in the language of, is
That's
that
That's
it?
one of the criteria.
Okay,
Not criteria, it's one of the criteria to review,
Consideration.
to look at.
I just have an issue with that sentence. Because I think we're sort of spelling out what the criteria are without saying, we don't have to say the character of the neighborhood because we've already spelled out what those conditions are.
But is that in the zoning?
Not in the
reg-
motion.
It's in the zoning
right
regulations.
now?
We could vote on this and then come back to
Okay.
that, is that okay?
That, I
Does that
don't
make
care.
sense? Cause this is just language
That's
that's not
fine.
related to this vote, right?
Right, that's why I wasn't sure if
It's
it
not,
was.
it's not
We should come
really,
back to
it's related to the overall discussion and consideration, but not the motion. You've got past that with the motion essentially.
Okay.
It's a good point.
are we ready for?
Yes.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. The motion passes 6 to 0. It was adopted as Diane made the motion. So the business rolls on, at least for another year. Good luck. I hope your
Thank you.
success
Thank you. Good luck.
continues.
Can I leave?
Yes. We won't make you stay any longer.
If you leave, I know a bunch of warehouses that my dad used to keep a septic truck. Leave a card or something, I'll hook
You
you
have
up.
a card? I will take.
No, if you can leave yours, I don't have one.
Oh,
Yeah. But dad used to keep a septic truck.
They have your info though,
Yeah.
right?
they do.
Yeah.
They got tons of
You
space
can
back
get
there.
her.
Yeah.
It's not used for anything. They can run.
So Brittany, I'll reach out then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item that we want to deal with is the bond reduction request that came to us once again from the Silverman Group. And just to be sure everyone's clear, it's not the first time we've dealt with this issue, but this bond has to do with the north parcel of the Silverman land at 200 Hot Meadow Street. And the application actually connects to the application 16-44 and also 17-10. And so you could see from those years, 2016 was the original application that had to do with this, and 2017 was the secondary application, so this business has been around for some time. I don't know that we need to read it, but we'll do that if, we're not gonna read the whole thing, but let me.
No, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was just gonna say, this is, I think
Do you wanna do a
the third
summary?
or the fourth reduction that you've received. Again, this is when the Hartford North, we're talking about the north parcel that is built out, except for the two commercial buildings. When it was originally approved in 2016, and then 2017, there was $1 million bond that went with the site, and that bond was, like most bonds, erosion control, site stabilization, roads, landscaping, so infrastructure related bonds. And so as is often standard, a developer will complete some of those aspects, right? And get it inspected by the town staff, the town engineer, the town planner, and then asks for a reduction, because obviously the cost of the bond to them is usually a monthly. And so as you reduce it, it reduces the costs after completing those elements. Again, those elements are inspected, so the bond today is down to 227. You allowed a reduction in April, if I recall. And so it's back to a $49,000 reduction today.
George, I'm curious, is it normal for it to take 8 years for somebody to complete all of the items on a bond? Is that, I don't know what to compare to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that the construction cycle was 8 full years. I mean, it got approval in 16, and we really built, the developer built the bulk of those residential units in 19 and 20. So by and large, it's been about a 5 to 6 year build out. I mean, I think it's fair to say we've had to press them on finishing some items out there, particularly the landscaping. So that, that has, the staff has worked in that capacity. But this is where we are. I think really the bulk of that number has a lot to do with final coating of all the, final paving, final curb work on all the internal streets, which are not done yet.
But it would seem like if they wanted to have to not pay as much monthly, they could just finish the project. And then they would have all their money.
Right.
And giving them little chunks piecemeal to reduce their overall cost, like I don't want bad business for them. But it does feel like it's not encouraging them to complete the work in some ways, so it's like.
So
I don't wanna
it
undue
is,
burden, I understand we're reducing by the amount that they've completed, but they could have just had the whole thing done and have all their money.
Sure, and I guess I would add one more thing. Again, I don't think I have a particular position on this. I think this is for you guys to decide. It is standard practice to reduce bonds, but you're not under any particular obligation to reduce the bonds on an ongoing basis. If all the work is done, we are obligated to dismiss the bond and return the bond if it's all inspected and done, but not necessarily obligated on an ongoing basis. It is standard practice.
So I guess I to sort of piggyback a little bit on what Kate was saying, what is the benefit to us in reducing this bond?
0.
Goodwill.
I'm not sure how to answer that question. I'll answer.
That might be a question
If you don't
for the
mind,
developer.
I'll answer a different question.
Sure, sure.
The applicant has responsibilities under the bond to complete and I think it's included in the letter, there's an attached matrix there that almost line items the things. And when they get to the point of finishing it, they say, well, it was covered under the bond and it's done, it shouldn't be on the bond anymore. So it's a benefit to the developer for sure. The fact that the improvement is done is a benefit to the community.
Sure. Did they give you a timeline of when these open items will be done?
There's not a timeline.
Specifically paving.
There's not a timeline associated that they have offered, Ms. Meadows. Staff has indicated to them that it would be difficult to give certificates of occupancy to the two final occupancies to the two outside office buildings if the entire site's not done.
Right.
And that's a little bit, to be
Just
quite honest, it's a little bit of.
restate that, George. I didn't,
Yeah, so what we have said, kind of staff to developer, you know, how official is that? Sometimes it's official, sometimes it's playing cards a little bit and say that on television. You know, there is a little bit of negotiation in this. We have said, we would like to see the entire site done before you get occupancy on the two outbuildings.
so
And
you
we know
didn't,
that,
you
now,
didn't present it as it's conditional. You didn't present it as it's conditional.
No, but I mean, we will be faced with a decision to make at that time and staff will consider its options and make that decision. I mean, that's kind of a staff administrative thing.
It's hard to consider reducing, sorry, Tony, to consider reducing the bond when we had a public hearing at the library where numerous residents showed up and just, this is all they talked about. It wasn't paved, there's conduit, there's not landscaping, and they just, you know, you could tell they're frustrated. So it's hard to reduce the bond by half, by the way.
Well, we're reducing a bond in response to them completing some of that work. It's not like we're just doing them a favor, right?
But they haven't completed the work.
Correct.
Well,
It's still not done.
a portion of the work.
Well, let me offer a different perspective.
Sure.
Personally, I'm not willing to support giving these guys another accommodation that they don't deserve, they haven't earned. And while we continue expending staff time, volunteer time, our own efforts, as well as the expense of outside counsel, to respond to the unwarranted litigation they initiated last, it was late spring, when we rejected a proposal that they presented purportedly complying with the Hartford Simsbury form-based code, which we found, except for one member, that it didn't comply, it wasn't close. And so they initiated litigation. We have an uncertain future within that arena, but I think it was, I want to be kind here, that at best it was unwarranted. And we shouldn't pretend that we're gonna share Thanksgiving dinner with these guys. This is not what's going on here. They don't, and some of you have been around this back and forth over that development. It's not been a pleasant experience, not at all. And it's not getting better. And they, on the one hand, are pursuing litigation and they're twisting and turning that to make that more complicated. And now they want us to accommodate their wish that we improve their cash flow by returning some of the money that's tied up in this bond. We have no obligation to do this for them. And so I think one hand washes the other. If they want to behave in the way that they want to behave, we have no obligation to do this. And I personally exercise our prerogative not to. I don't support this. Now, everybody's making their own decision, but if two people join me in that perspective, this is over.
I would just want to comment, I don't think it's appropriate to link the two issues.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand
Yeah.
that there is litigation, but I think this is separate and apart from that. I view this as being strictly administrative. It's something we've done in the past. The planning department is recommending that we do this again. And I don't see any reason why we would not follow prior precedent and agree with this. And I do not think that we should use the litigation ongoing as a basis for denying an administrative request that the planning department supports.
If I could add in a word, just on that theme though, that it's not just, our relationship with this firm goes back, till they bought the property in 2015. But the intensity has emerged in more recent years. But my concern is that we're not going anywhere in terms of improving relations. They're not doing us any favors. And they continue to make life more complicated. They're wasting our time, in my opinion. It's just the way I feel about it. So everybody's entitled to their own perspective.
I mean, I agree, like, I would like to kind of keep the two things separate, other than to say that, and I think, Bruce was trying to get at this a bit, that giving the bond, like reducing the bond is sort of like goodwill on our part, and they aren't showing good faith in the way that they're conducting themselves on this particular site. They are not doing the work. They could have had it done and have all their money in their hand. And I worry that the smaller the amount gets, the less likely they are to want to complete the remaining items. Like if it's $50,000 worth of work, I don't know what $50,000 is to a company like that. Maybe that work never happens and we're stuck with having to chase them down because we've given all of our assurances and put all our cards on the table for somebody who we know has not shown goodwill to us in completing those tasks. So I don't think it has anything to do with anything that happened on the other site, but I do think based on their performance on the current site that is in question, we should not release any additional funds to them until we see a lot more happening.
On the north side, you mean,
I think the certificate of occupancy for those two commercial buildings is a pretty good incentive for them to continue the work. I don't know that this is the thing we wanna get cute with them on. I think that this is pretty administrative, like Tony said. We've already done this before with this same exact place. I think certificate of occupancy is a really, really good way to make sure that they are continuing to complete the work. They have to get tenants for those buildings. That's a huge incentive.
Torn.
That's my.
This
I'm
is
torn.
not getting cute. This is reducing their bond, of which we've already done. George already said, we have already played ball and reduced our bond a couple of times.
Yeah.
And we still have an unfinished product, and we have people living there, Tucker.
Yeah.
I ask anybody to walk the site, it's unfinished. It's not safe.
So I'm of the opinion that, like, we don't have any legal reason we have to do this, but I feel like the level of precedent, not just in general, is so strong around this that I think we need a good reason to deny it. Like legally, yeah, we don't need a reason, but based on precedent, we need a good reason. I'm not sure we have a strong enough reason to justify denying it. Doesn't mean I'm very happy about approving it, but I don't think the reasoning is strong enough to not approve it.
even though we've heard part of the testimony that we heard about the north side complex was that it hadn't been painted, there were, it was getting run down, there was a lack of maintenance. In our public hearings, I mean, that is a reason, whether it's strong enough, I'm not sure, but I don't wanna ignore that.
Yeah, we have like itemized lists. If they were asking for if they were pushing what they were asking for, then absolutely, deny it. But it seems like, we're saying that it's about 50%, but if they've got it about 50% down from what it was the last time we reduced it.
I don't know, I mean, I feel like.
Can they provide a schedule for completion in order to be considered for this? Because I feel like I certainly can't get anywhere close to coming along if we don't have a schedule of completion that they're actually gonna stick.
Well, how about that? How about going back to the
Just
applicant?
a moment, we've had, over the years we've been dealing with this company, a number of times where we've had timelines, commitments, they swear they're gonna do it. I remember one time they said they were gonna have that commercial building, shell, the one on the north side of the driveway. And one of the owners, Blake Silverman, stood in front of us, actually, I think he was on his own meeting. And he told us If that building wasn't gonna be done by the deadline, he was gonna get his hammer and his tools and he was gonna come out here and work on it. And we didn't see him again for 2 years in Simsbury. The building's not done now. And so the timeline on getting a commercial building leased from the time they have it shelled, I mean, I don't know what to say about it. I've expressed enough frustration with dealing with these guys, but they're not gonna do better. They're gonna do what they have been doing, and they've made their company successful in their own eyes. So,
George, do they have other bonds agreements that have been unfulfilled on that property?
I don't think we're at risk of that, not to interrupt, but we're not at risk of the bill.
No, I'm just asking
No,
if they
this
would
is-
be
this
coming
is it.
back.
This is the site improvement bond for Hartford North.
So it's not like they're gonna come back again with, I don't know, a different bond on the north
No,
property. So this is it.
this is it.
This is the last,
This is the bond. We had $1 million
this is the
bond.
bond.
It was reduced by a previous zoning commission to 600,000, and I think it went to 300. Now it's in 227.
We have a separate bond for 600,000 on the building that
We do.
George,
they
could-
were supposed to get done 3 years ago.
Could we go back to the applicant and ask them to take care of something on this list? And then we would consider reducing the bond?
Yes, I mean, you can ask the applicant, you can say, we're not prepared to reduce the bond at this time. Can you give us a schedule? Can you do these other things? You can, we would like to see the road done, or whatever you think should be done.
I think that would be productive.
Is there a priority line item here?
I think the final code of bituminous is the primary, I mean, that's where the bulk of the dollars are.
Money, yeah.
Paving the streets.
Yep.
Final code, that's what that means.
Before winter, again.
But that's not gonna satisfy. the
No, but when
bond.
they do that, they'll come back and ask for the bond to be reduced.
Understand,
Right.
that's okay. But that's what you get.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we're gonna vote yes, but they can come back tomorrow if they want to.
Yeah.
Next month.
Well, So if they, but I understand the idea is that if there is a specific line item here that still hasn't been achieved and we think that we don't wanna reduce the bond and leave that one hanging, asking them to complete that line item and then say we'll reduce the bond by the corresponding amount with all the other stuff, I think is totally fair. It keeps a little bit of the fire going under them. I think that we're-
Because that bituminous is such a major part of the bond, you're better off asking them for just to complete it all at this point.
Is that, do
For
you think
what?
that's what's holding them up?
Complete it all, because I mean, the final
what's
code is like
holding it up is they don't-
130,000 of the
They're
177.
holding all this cash.
Well, I would like them to complete it all.
Right,
So, I mean,
so,
The renters are paying, and they claim about 100% occupancy. The renters are paying their share. You know, and so when they signed their leases, they expected the place was gonna be done, and I mean done, not just 80% or 90%, but done completely, as it was described to them, as the images that they showed everyone were gonna be fulfilled, and they're not. And the people who live there, well, they could go find attorneys to represent them and file claims here. There's no point in encouraging that either, but the people who live there are looking at us, wondering why we let this happen. Well, they're stuck. They're not as stuck as some other Simsbury residents, but in this case, how do you think some of those people who came to our meetings last winter would feel about this request? And making it easier for this management group by improving their cash flow by giving them a chunk of money, and the job's not done. I stand by my earlier.
And I feel like
Recitation.
the answer,
They don't deserve it.
I think that the comment about the precedent is a good one. But I do think that the thing that overrides that is they could have just been done and had their money.
I mean, the other
Many
thing is,
times
there's a
over.
precedent, but there's also rewarding bad behavior. So at what point does the precedent become like, okay, yeah, we've done it for you 5 times, so now we're just rewarding bad behavior rather than just, okay, yeah, I guess there's a precedent, but I mean, how long are we gonna keep doing this?
Right.
I'm certainly not gonna lose any sleep if we deny it, as much as I argued in favor of it,
Yeah, no, I think you made a good, I think you made good
Absolutely.
logical points,
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to make sure.
Well, let's just go down the line one more time. Does anybody wanna add to what they've already said or heard? Josh? Jackie?
Nope.
Okay. Okay. I've said more than I intended to, but
I've made my position clear, Mr. Chair.
yeah, okay, thank you. And Kate, do you wanna add anything?
I'm
Shannon?
clear, I think.
You've had enough. Okay, then
So Mr. Chairman, I would say that if the consensus is to not take any action or to not approve a bond reduction, then I think you simply don't need to take any action.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think the action would be in the affirmative to approve the bond reduction, otherwise,
well, but that wouldn't prevent you from sending a letter to
it would not prevent that correspondence.
The request was
reasons.
brought up and no
Yeah.
action was taken, so.
Otherwise, I mean, a motion could be in order if that's your pleasure, but if it's the consensus to not take action, then, I mean, I guess the motion would be to not approve the bond at this time, would be the negative to the affirmative.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, there are not enough votes to support the motion. At best, I think there were 2 votes in favor of the motion.
Yeah.
I don't see any point in voting on the motion.
So the record will say that we took no action, consensus to take no action at this time.
Yes.
On the request.
Yeah,
Okay.
two, not exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful. To support, but I think, was there anything else that we needed to cover? Do you wanted to do some sharing of information, George, or did you cover?
Well, I would like to go over the housing strategies memo first, if I could.
I was wondering why it was
Staff
so
spent a lot of time on this.
No.
Brittany and I spent the summer on this stuff, so. You just passed it.
Yeah, you have 2 minutes.
This is gonna
adjourn.
But this is only
we're
a
not-
discussion initiating meeting, it's not.
So we wanted to introduce, I mean, so here's the framing of tonight, which is, if you recall, we adopted a new plan of conservation and development back in January. And then this commission took time in May and June to prioritize some of those action steps. And, you know, we did the dot exercise and we did the math and showed you the matrix and did all that. And essentially there were 5 action steps that rose to the top based on your voting of items to get started on. We decided, and you decided, and they were all housing related. And there's 4 up there, but there's really 5 as I'll take you down. So we put together a draft memo, a policy memo with potential text amendment action to address the issue of inclusionary zoning, and that's the set aside requirement, the affordability requirement for any residential application. Put together hopefully a final minor amendment to accessory dwelling units, but really as it relates to process and how they're reviewed. We offer a new standard small lot zoning district. If you think about the things you've talked about and the things we've heard about, a lot of discussion in our public hearings, for the Vessel hearing and for the Silverman hearing. You know, we don't have small lots, we don't have the opportunity for first-time home buyers. And as I've probably said this 1,000 times to my staff and to others that are probably worn out, is that smaller lots have smaller houses, which are usually more affordable in our marketplace. So we've got, you know, our minimum lot size is 15,000 square feet, you know, and then we're seeing, you know, 3,200 square foot houses on some of those lots, and most of those lots, many of those lots. So anyway, we offer a small lot zoning district of a minimum 8,000 square feet. We think that's a good number, but we are more than open to figuring out what that right number is for this community. Is it 5? Is it even a little bit smaller? Is it 5,000 square feet? Maybe it is, and so we need to have that conversation as we move to the next meeting or two. But attached to that, including that is this concept of, how do we begin to offer an alternative type of product? And as I've also said a number of times, we don't have zoning districts, straight zoning districts, true zoning districts that accommodate anything other than single-family houses. Yeah, that you can do some stuff in a pad, and yes, the Hartford Simsbury zone allows for this kind of stuff, but we don't allow a district that allows attached units, good old-fashioned duplex units. So we think it might be a good idea to consider that as part of that smaller lot subdivision, 8,000 square foot minimum, but allow attached units as a matter of right. And then finally, we took a shot at what we call the workforce housing overlay, which was adopted 2 decades ago, has been used once, but it is the floating zone that is supposed to encourage developers to provide more density, provide different kinds of housing. The workforce housing as it's today allows for, it requires a 20% affordability component. We should just pull that out because you're gonna hopefully adopt an inclusionary that's gonna apply to everything. But that's a district that we should have relied on for a mixed use or a multifamily or a condo development or those kinds, and we just never saw it for whatever reason. And I just have individual quick slides on what they are, and again, I would recommend we do kind of a line by line on strike through at your next meeting or your meeting after that, and you can start asking questions and what kind of information do you want from staff that we didn't provide? What are we not thinking about? We are, we're smart, we have degrees, but we have small egos, and so if there are things we're not getting, or if there's things we're not understanding, or if there's better ideas, please direct us and put us in, and give us those ideas. We want them. So for the ADU, we are proposing a simple removal of a simple barrier. Allow them both as a matter of right by zoning permit only. Today, we require a detached unit to go through a public hearing. Which we like to have more public input often, but often that allows for a neighborhood to veto a use we're trying to encourage. That so long as it meets the zoning regs, that it's the right square footage and it's at the right setback, not quite clear why we want a more arduous process. So we would recommend for attached accessory dwelling units and detached, no changes to the square footage that you've already worked on very hard over the last couple of years, this commission and the previous commission, but a staff review only. We would recommend that. So the inclusionary zoning, the set aside, you've started those conversations. You invited a number of folks we had folks from kind of both sides of the table, some developers talking about it, but we haven't really changed it that much. We have to figure out and simplify, I think. So the current draft that we have given you after listening to some developers and listening to advocates, we put the number at 15%. You're gonna end up at a number between 10 and 20. I think that's your job to try to end up with that, but we kind of chose 15. As you get to 20, boy, you're getting awfully close to 30, which is an 830G. And so we need to be careful about that. We kept in this half at 60 AMI and half at 80, but we know from the development community that it's virtually impossible to meet that 80%. And so that is something we need to figure out whether we want to continue to go forward with that and how, particularly without any ability to provide tax incentive at this point locally or rebates locally. Tucker certainly has or land, or free land or that kind of thing. I would love, conceptually and theoretically, there are carrots associated with that. We give the land for free, you do a tax rebate, but I don't see how we have that in order right now, and it makes it hard to get to 60%.
Can I say one quick thing?
I'm just talking.
It has to be a process incentive. It has to be an easier process. If you're meeting these requirements, it's easier to get it approved. It cuts down on their overhead, it cuts down on their lawyers. I think that's the way that this will end up being successful, in my opinion. So I think process incentives are probably gonna be a good thing.
I think you're right, we just have to figure out what those are.
Right.
So, yeah. So again, we didn't add anything about a buyout, we did not add fee in lieu.
Right.
It was just, we just need to find what percentage are you gonna require and how to apply it. We really haven't gotten that far from the original discussion. Standard R8, so this would look just like your R15 or your R40 or your R80. It would have a minimum lot size, it would have minimum frontage, front, side, rear, setbacks, those kinds of things. And again, those numbers are, we looked at adjoining towns that have a little bit of density like that. I think that makes sense, we could continue to hone that just to make sure.
And those would have to be water and sewer, correct?
So we would of course recommend a requirement that once you get to that density, must have water and sewer.
It's very specific,
Or
very
water-
specific areas.
Water and sewer reasonably extended. Yeah, it's a finite area, and so we know where that density would go.
Yep.
There's no threat of it going to the west. And again, we think that allowing the duplex unit or attached unit, people call them, interchangeably, but as a matter of right, and on those lots, you'd have an 8,000 square foot lot, but you'd have two units, one with 4,000 and one with 4,000, and they would still be fee simple.
Just on the 8,000 square feet, I'm interested in what the vision is of the target is an affordable home. And I'm not sure we all have the same thoughts about what's an affordable home. Bedrooms, bathrooms, as I mentioned to you earlier, maybe unfinished space. I mean, there's a variety of scenarios. We're just saying it's gonna be 8,000 square feet. And to come to grips with whether the 8,000 should be 6,000 or something less, we gotta be clearer about what we're trying to facilitate. And if there's information out there on that, I'm not sure what the real estate agents that we have contact with, one who's sitting right down there, what people who are coming here, did they really come here when they're looking for it?
Absolutely.
And they just think it's gonna happen for them, that they'll find these starter homes, for instance.
What they're looking for is to downsize.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's another market.
I don't know if it would fit on an 8,000 square foot lot, but like 1,000 square foot home would work, if that worked. Is that too big?
No, God, boy, we had this conversation today, is that, is there value to having some consideration of a maximum house size
Well, I was gonna talk
on
about,
lots like that too? So we've got, this is something we're gonna get into at our next meeting,
a
Bruce.
surface figure, those standards need to be similar to.
But staff's point of departure on this was not necessarily affordable with the capital A, but a
Attainable.
different product that's more reasonably attainable.
Yeah.
We were not trying to meet some definition of affordability. The marketplace is gonna drive that.
Right.
I don't know how.
It's still gonna be new construction.
Staff is gonna, it's
You're
gonna
still
be in
gonna
high
cost.
demand, it's gonna be it's still Simsbury, it's still Simsbury schools.
And water and
All
sewer.
that, none of that is gonna change. And, the other thing to think about is, it's not like we have green fields to develop that we could do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 8,000 square foot lots. Developers gonna take advantage of infill opportunities, of a 3 acre, 6 acre, where they can not do one house on the regular zoning, but 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And so that's that's the development we're gonna see in the coming years, and it's not gonna be, this is at the margins. It's trying to offer alternatives that we don't have. That's
People would be able to have a duplex that they lived in and rented the other half of, right?
Yep, yes.
There wouldn't be like, that would not
So
go
it-
into like some weird accessory dwelling situation, that would be part of this.
They'd be two homes.
It would be two homes.
There would be two
and
homes, again, we are
both
not
homes.
dictating rental, or somebody would own it, be
Good.
simple.
Good.
Someone would own it. Be simple.
Yes.
I think that's how I became a homeowner.
No, I think it's a good idea, I just,
Place,
that's why I wanted to make sure that we weren't somehow languaging ourselves out of that.
Yeah,
Because that's a
exactly,
nice
yeah.
opportunity for people.
Absolutely.
It's a little early for that.
Just one question, what's 8,000 square feet in terms of acreage?
Yes, thank you, Tony.
So it's an eighth of an acre, right? An eighth,
An eighth of an acre?
Oh.
sixth, an eighth. So an acre is 43,506, 563.
That's an eighth of an acre.
So 15,000 square foot lot's a quarter acre.
Yeah.
The builder's acre is
Would you
40,000
like to
square
go
feet, so normally that's what.
Like R15 is a quarter acre.
Mhm.
So this is R8, it's, you guys do the math, I was a political science major. I think it's an eighth.
So is
That's
it
an eighth.
fair to give a visual?
So
Is
we're
Pond-
gonna,
is
so
Pond
we're gonna
Place-
do pictures, at our next meeting, we will do pictures of what that looks like, aerial pictures. Yes.
It's
Well-
it's a PUD, I mean, you're gonna see all the other, houses, it's planned.
Well,
I mean, maybe the site is good for just, laying out 8,000 square foot lots in a subdivision. It's possible.
Yeah.
I think it could manifest itself in a million different ways. But the PUD idea, Jackie, is really a rewrite of the WHOZ,
Yep.
which is to allow a good old fashioned floating zone
Yep.
that you can drop on a piece of property that has water and sewer. And that allows somebody to come to you and say, this is what I'm thinking.
Mhm.
Is it a good idea or not? Again, we don't have a zoning district, this zoning district is what we have, so we would recommend a rename of the zone. Developer's gonna choose that housing mix again, it could be townhouses, it could be a mix of those things, but again, the kind of development we allow today requires the commercial component, so this could be a standalone planned overlay of residential, a small residential development or a big residential development. Public water and sewer, if you're familiar with our zoning regulations, this zoning district, this zone has like 8 pages of design guidelines. And I don't know why. We don't have design guidelines for regular residential development. We've got community-wide guidelines. We should just apply those. So we would recommend just taking that out. Let's make it easier. The WHO district has some requirement that it's gotta be within 750 feet of Hot Meadow. Cambridge Crossing is the only one that we did, and that's more than 750 feet, so I don't know how we got there with that, but I think if you just require the water and sewer,
Had the water and sewer, exactly.
if you have the water and sewer
That was the
requirement.
thought, is the density and that it was in proximity to Hot Meadow, that was the original thought.
And none of this takes the decision-making of the zoning commission away. Somebody's gonna come with an overlay, and it's a master plan and then site plan process, right? So you have to do the zone change that makes it the overlay, and you're gonna make a decision as to whether it's a good idea. Is it compatible? Is the design good? So this keeps your decision-making practices in place. Doesn't change any of that. You're gonna be still asked to make the decision whether it's a good idea or bad idea to do this development in this location.
I think the concern was if there was a couple acre lot that somebody bought in an established neighborhood of 1 acre or 2 acre lots.
Yeah, sure.
And that they bought it and then they started putting all these, would that affect the value there? So if you,
Yeah, it could, but hopefully you would come to that conclusion without, you'd still be able to say that's a bad idea. And
I'm just telling, I think that was the reason.
that was the reason they did it, yeah. Well, again, if it makes some sense, we can figure out, if you think that's still needs to be in there, well, let's keep it in there, but, maybe there are other infill opportunities where we have water and sewer that it makes sense beyond that. Okay, that's all I had on that, so I would recommend that, we just get it, we try to do this on, certainly we can do it on the 16th. Right now, you just have one public hearing, the compost text amendment. So right now, that's fairly light, right? I mean, that's not gonna be, so we could set up and do kind of work session on these 4 topics if that's what you wanted to do and kind of go through in a lot more detail. The specific language even, like what we would normally do, we would kind of walk through the text of the language.
I would like to do that.
And we'll be prepared to show kind of examples of what we think this means and do that kind of thing.
Just one thing before we give it up for tonight. On the accessory dwelling units, I wasn't sure what you wanted to do with the format in terms of a little discussion, a little referencing the material, but one thing I can't resist making a comment on is that I think that's an opportunity to take a look at doing more to accommodate people who have limitations of various sorts. And we have this thing that's at the end of the material that was distributed that talks about the 10% allowance for ADUs that are done to comply with the standard from that is required for multifamily housing apartments in England. And when we came up with this idea of the 10% bonus, that's in some other town. I saw that somewhere and I thought, and I think that was a big step from where we were, but there's more opportunity there. And I think we should go back and take a look at that aspect of it too.
Okay.
And you know, what we had in mind was, I did anyway, was that you have individual situations that could be spoken to that might require more, but this goes back several years, and having been around here the interim time, I don't remember anybody coming in and saying they had a medical thing and they needed that 10%. So I don't know that we're getting anything from it, but it felt good at the time. And maybe there's an opportunity to do better and see more interest in it.
Yeah, so remember, this is gonna be your work product. You know, our job is to kind of lay the framework to get you in the direction you wanna go. We don't have a particular authorship or ownership. We wanna help you develop these guidelines, you know, that are best for the community at this time, so that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so here's just development updates, cause I thought I'd hit you with some, you know, what's going on,
Yes,
et
please.
cetera. So you do like this usually. So some good news and some bad news related to Wagner Ford. You guys ask about Wagner Ford every week.
Every other.
So, every other, Mr. Ratz, yeah, of course. So Wagner Ford, so the good news is that Wagner Ford has filed for a demolition permit to demolish the structure. There is a, so that's good, that's how we start. You gotta, you have to, why do you laugh?
So when did they do that?
A couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, but it requires, because, and for, you know the statute, any building in the state of Connecticut that's over 50 years old requires a 2-week notice period, so we had to run the ad for that and do that kind of stuff. They also have to file, as part of that demolition, some hazardous material stuff and information. So that's good, so that's some, I mean, it's an activity, but it's a permitting activity. You know, I gild the lily a little bit there. So the bad news is that if you recall, one of the primary issues during the review of those special exception applications on site was this issue of access to the site.
The left turn.
Left turn. So the left turn, this commission added a condition to require a right in, right out condition after a lengthy discussion. Of course, that is always subject to DOT approval. And DOT is taking the position to not abide by the local condition. And since their decision-making supersedes, they are going to allow the left turn in. You know, kind of with monitoring once it's open and to see if there's any problems. But so just so you know, that is a condition of approval that you added. We talked to the town attorney. It's in DOT right of way. It's, you know, any transportation condition you put on that's related to DOT road is subject to their approval.
Are they
How
gonna
would you
restrict?
get in if it was a write-in only?
So they would modify, so that entrance will be modified so that you can be in that queue. The turn lane, think about the turn lane that gets you to the big Y. You'll be in that turn lane and you'll make the left into the Wagner Ford property from that queue. And it won't be a pork chop anymore, it'll be a straight in.
Are they gonna change the lines then?
Yeah, there'll be some restriping and a bunch of stuff that goes with that. So that was, anyway, just wanted to, I think my job to tell you that stuff and not keep it from you. Raising Cane's is gonna, has their opening day party, opening day party.
Yeah, they have a ribbon cutting.
What's it called? Grand opening day party. Next week, I think the 10th and the 9th and the 10th, so that's a big deal. I would just add that there's going to be enhanced congestion in that area
Oh, yeah.
for
Oh, yeah.
probably a period of up to 30 days. Just be aware.
The one in Enfield is not crowded anymore.
Right. Yeah.
But it
So
was like.
we've worked very closely with
Three
them.
towns that are gonna be going.
Yeah, there will be. It's gonna be,
It's good.
it's gonna be tough.
Already.
But it's gonna be great, it's gonna be successful business,
Yes.
listen, it's the fastest growing fast food banner in the country.
Wow.
They're building thousands of stores, and they've been very good to work with. We put a traffic plan together. There's gonna be Avon Police and Simsbury Police working the lights, off-duty personnel, so I think we can't I was just gonna say, I mean, I can't cure for the congestion that's gonna be out there.
Yeah.
But I think we put ourselves in a queuing the best possible way to get there, but people say it's good, so.
It'll settle down and
Enjoy.
we'll have good chicken.
Yep.
It's pretty good.
So our friends at the skating rink have started land clearing, and they do have a permit for the expansion of the skating rink. We haven't seen any footage yet, but that's coming, they're waiting for steel and that kind of stuff.
1 sheet of ice, 2 sheet of ice?
It's two half.
So it's two halves, yeah, it's two halves, it's a better way to say it.
Got it.
Two halves. If you drive up and down Hot Meadow, you know that the childcare center that you approved not too long ago is under construction. If you remember, this commission approved some mobile storage units on Tarrytville Road in the north side, so that facility's just about ready to open. The buildings are done, there's some site work to be done, but it's almost there. We'll go to 830G at the end here. So the Tarrytville neighborhood plan, the survey is out. Please take the Tarrytville neighborhood plan if you haven't. Please take the survey.
People outside of Terriffill to do that.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. You can answer, you live in Tarrytville, yes, you work in Tarrytville, yes, there's lots of options. Please take it.
The specialty nature of what that is, but okay.
Public meeting, public workshop, public open house for the Tarrytville neighborhood plan, Thursday, September 26th.
Yes, Terriffill Elementary School.
I think
I had to miss the last one, I have to miss
TBD on
that one.
time, I don't think
Darn
we've
it.
set the time yet,
What was the date?
so
September 26th.
4 to 8, 5 to 9, 4 to 7, we haven't figured that out. But anyway, we've had some nice interactions with the Tarrytville Neighborhood Association. Folks down there, Brittany and I went to their August Neighborhood Association meeting and gave them a presentation and answered a lot of questions, spent a lot of time with them, so.
Village Association.
What's that?
Village Association.
What did I say, Neighborhood Association?
Neighborhood Association.
Yeah, TVA.
TVA,
TVA, sorry, TVA. So obviously we had a special meeting, so I can't really talk about what happened at the special meeting a couple weeks ago. Silverman Hartford South project is still in the courts. I have had conversations with their local attorney, and they are considering some of their options outside of the court process, which could be filing an 830G, could be asking for some amendments to the Hartford Simsbury form-based code to allow for a more heavier residential component. And I don't know if that's a bad thing, at least we could have a conversation about the best uses down there, so I'll keep you apprised of when that gets more interesting. The last thing I wanted to bring your attention to is I was asked to give a presentation to the Board of Selectmen a couple of weeks ago, just really on big picture stuff related to housing. So we talked about development and did some statistics and some demographics and a whole bunch of stuff. But I did bring to their attention, since it's in the state statute, that staff have been working on our progress towards what's called a certificate of completion. So that means, obviously that we are subject to 830G applications because we haven't met the 10% threshold. But the statute allows for us to count and get points for the affordable projects that we have approved since 1991. Yeah, 1991, and there are a couple of old ones and a couple of new ones that nobody really did the points analysis on, and we put an application together, a draft application, and we provided it to the town attorney. And we have also made this, the same presentation and alerted the Board of Selectmen. Under the state statute, even though you guys are involved in all of the land uses, the Board of Selectmen's charge to authorize a submission to the state. And so the Board of we're in conversations with the Board of Selectmen as to how to move that forward. We think it's possible that we have enough points to get a certificate of housing completion. And what that means is, people have referred to that as a moratorium. I don't really like to use the word. It's not a moratorium on affordable housing projects. It's a moratorium on being subject to the 830G procedure. It would mean that for 4 years, an affordable housing project would have to meet our zoning practices and our zoning process and not be exempt from them. So
It does not mean that we stop working on affordable housing.
that's correct. Absolutely not. It's not even
Because every
it
time
doesn't
there's any
remotely mean that,
development,
but
we
that
would be subject to
it just means we're not
meeting our.
not subject to the
Correct.
the inequities of the zoning processes. So anyway, I think it's my job to also let you know that we're working on that. We will work with Mr. Looney and other members of the Board of Selectmen to see how to move that forward, and maybe with they have to authorize any final submission. So I thought I would let you know that that's where we are with that.
That's great, thank you.
Was
Yeah, a
that
lot of-
favorably received? I imagine it was by the select board.
Yeah, it was. It was. So it's just a lot of work because you're talking about every deed and every certificate of occupancy for for some older projects too.
Thanks for the update, that's
Brittany, is that it?
Is there anything to be said about the 830-G apartment going in Wheat Dog? Are you hearing from those guys?
Yeah, sure, I apologize, that wasn't part of my,
Well, they were in the news.
we are
because they got approved.
expecting the vessel 446 Hot Meadow Street, a building permit submission in the next week. We spoke to them this week, in fact, gave them some feedback, and they were asking some questions about the building permit process. So we expect they'll submit that this week.
Could you just remind me of do we have any leverage in terms of, I'm interested, and probably other people are too, seeing as many trees remaining on that property as possible when the building's done. And so
the leverage we have, it would be after the fact. I mean, we have a stipulated agreement that includes a site plan and a landscaping plan. So any additional savings would be out of as part of some goodwill effort on both our part and their part. So what's stipulated to is the plan that was approved by the judge.
the plan is
and
marked for
adopted
the
by you.
removal of trees.
But can we work with them to do better? Of course. They're not under any particular obligation to, but I expect that they'd be willing to chat.
If you wanna say we work with them, I mean, I think that's what most of us are looking for is those mature trees, as many that can stay as possible.
But what would we even give them?
I don't know.
Nothing, we don't have anything to give.
Well, I don't know that we would
will.
need to give them anything. I
We
think
already didn't do that.
once it comes in,
Doesn't carry
so
forward.
just in terms of logistics, when they submit the building plan set, they will also submit a final site plan set. Because if you remember the stipulation, we had to review the final stormwater plan, because remember, the building got smaller, the number of units got smaller, so that stormwater plan might just be a little bit different. So that's so we'll do that, and as part of that, we'll look at that landscaping plan.
That'd be great,
Okay?
thank you.
Okay, so we're all done, and could I have a motion we've completed everything that was on the agenda plus a few things. So could I have a motion to adjourn
So moved.
at 9:54?
8:54.
Yeah,
Just seems like 3 hours.
Anyway, all in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. So we're adjourned.
so quick.